I was taught how to sew at the age of 3 by my mother, who was particularly crafty, pushing me to knit, sew, and experiment with fibers and textiles. This instilled a deep love for traditional hands-on practices. In high school, I found my love for making clothes, rug hooking, and spinning wool into yarn using a drop spindle. I loved this practice of using only my physical force of twisting and gravity to give strength to a fragile material. It was also at this time when I became fascinated with naturally dyeing wool after meeting a hat maker in Boston who gave me his old natural dye book, which was delightfully chewed up by his dog. I pored over his handwritten notes in the margins as I created natural dyes for my spun wool. I would go on walks gathering goldenrod, acorns, sumac, and walnut hulls to bring home and test out. That experimentation and discovery through my surrounding plants, which were in abundance in Toronto, made me feel at home and connected to the land. When I moved from Toronto to Los Angeles, I was shocked by the cacti, palm trees, and eucalyptus that seemed to be everywhere. While I was amazed, my new friends local to Southern California didn't seem to think twice about the magic of roses blooming on the side of the road or massive bougainvillea trailing over the highway barriers. I wanted to learn more about these plants that were new to me and become fully acquainted with their properties and characteristics. I became curious about the concept of being uprooted versus planted and what it really means to feel like you belong in a space, exploring this through native plants' inherent nature of belonging. This all began my exploration of natural dyeing using native and localized plants from Los Angeles. Through this project, I wanted to learn as much as I could about the plants that surrounded me, documenting where they are found and what their dye color potential could be. I chose plants that represented all aspects of the surrounding Los Angeles area: seaweed from the shoreline, prickly pears from the mountains, and goldenrod from the wetlands, to name a few. I documented my findings in a book format that I will bind myself, interspersing scanned pages that include my dyed fabric on cards with text printed using my 1970s typewriter, surrounded by scanned plant material. I thought that this would be the best way to digitally display the fabric and plants most accurately. There will also be full spread images of where the plants and material was sourced from, with an overlaying frosted mylar sheet printed with the location's topographic map. Once I had developed my Los Angeles naturally dyed cotton library, I had to figure out the best way to use them to further my story. I figured the most effective way to convey my findings was through a quilt, considering quilt's deep history and storytelling. The quilt was sewn together to represent a map of the Los Angeles area, using specific fabrics dyed with plants grown in the areas on the map. I wanted to further the cartographic imagery with detailed top stitching. I made several small test quilts to see how I would approach creating detailed, almost drawn lines on the quilt using my home sewing machine, testing out different colors and techniques. Once the quilt was all pieced together, I top stitched over it with the topographic map detailing the Los Angeles area to create the finished piece, which I called Rooted, with the goal of bringing more awareness to native and localized plants and the capabilities of natural dyeing to tell the story of finding one's place and feeling rooted.